The 18th of September, 1931. Japan, seeking raw materials to fuel its growing industries, invades Manchuria, an industrial area located in northeastern China, known for its rich mineral and coal reserves. In the following years, there will be various incidents or armed clashes of a limited nature between the Empire of the Rising Sun and the Republic of China. But full-scale war will not break out between the two countries until the Marco Polo Bridge incident on the 7th of July, 1937. This marks the beginning of the Second Sino-Japanese War that will end only with Japan's surrender on the 2nd of September, 1945. During this war, which is the prelude to the Pacific side of World War II, the Japanese army scores major victories, capturing Beijing and Shanghai, and in December 1937, the Japanese military invades Nanjing, then China's capital. In Nanjing, the Japanese soldiers commit unspeakable atrocities and engage in a campaign of mass killing, which over the course of 2 months will claim the lives of as many as 300,000 civilians and numerous unarmed Chinese soldiers. One of the men responsible for these atrocities is the Japanese Major General Moritake Tanabe. Moritake Tanabe was born on the 26th of February, 1889 in Ishikawa Prefecture, Japan. As with his father, who was a former samurai and later a colonel in the early Imperial Japanese Army, Moritake also wanted to become a soldier. After attending military preparatory schools, Tanabe graduated from the Imperial Japanese Army Academy in 1910 and from the Army Staff College in 1918. In his early career, Tanabe served on the staff of the Kyoto-based 16th Division, which was one of the 4 new infantry divisions raised by the Imperial Japanese Army in the closing stages of the Russo-Japanese War from 1904 to 1905. Tanabe then served as an instructor at the Army Academy, as a military attaché to France, a commander of the 61st Infantry Battalion, and on the staff of the Army Maintenance Bureau. After serving as an instructor at the Toyama Army Infantry School from 1933 to 1934, Tanabe served as a chief of the Economic Mobilization Section in the Army Ministry. He returned to the field to command the 34th Infantry Regiment from 1936 to 1937, before his promotion to Major General in August 1937, and then returning to the Toyama Army Infantry School as its commandant. Conflict in Asia between Japan and China began with the invasion of Manchuria, well before the official start of World War II. As part of early treaty agreements, the Japanese had troops protecting the railroad in southern Manchuria. However, Japan wanted to expand their control over Chinese Manchuria, so on the 18th of September, 1931, the Japanese planted a small explosive device next to the tracks owned by Japan's South Manchuria Railroad near the city of Mukden. The explosion that followed became known as the Mukden Incident. Though damage to the railway was minimal, it provided an excuse for the Japanese for the speedy and unauthorized capture of Mukden, now Shenyang, and to seize all the cities along the railroad. Despite Chinese opposition, the Japanese continued to advance, and by the 27th of February, 1932, the last Chinese opposing the Japanese were forced to surrender, and all of Manchuria was in Japanese hands. On the 1st of March, the Japanese established the puppet state of Manchukuo, which was dissolved only on the 18th of August, 1945, after the Japanese Emperor Hirohito had announced the unconditional surrender of the Japanese military 3 days earlier. The Japanese army invaded Manchuria without the approval of the civilian government in Japan and without declarations of war, breaching the rules of the League of Nations. There were 2 main reasons for the invasion. The first reason was that Japan had a highly developed industry, but the land was scarce of natural resources. As a result, it turned to Chinese Manchuria for oil, coal, rubber, lumber, and other raw materials in order to make up for the lack of resources in Japan. The second reason was that Japan saw Manchuria as a buffer state against encroachments of its interests by the Soviet Union from Siberia. With the invasion having attracted great international attention, the League of Nations sent a Lytton Commission to investigate the attack. The commission, which delivered its findings in October 1932 and was headed by Lord Lytton, held the Japanese responsible for the attack, stating that Japan was the aggressor, had wrongfully invaded Manchuria, and that it should be returned to the Chinese. It also argued that the Japanese puppet state of Manchukuo should not be recognized. On the 27th of March, 1933, Japan gave formal notice of its withdrawal from the League of Nations. Since the invasion of Manchuria, there were various incidents or armed clashes of a limited nature between the Empire of Japan and the Republic of China, but all had subsided. However, this changed on the night of the 7th of July, 1937, when a small Japanese force on maneuvers near the Marco Polo Bridge demanded entry to the tiny walled town of Nanking in order to search for one of their soldiers. However, the Chinese garrison in the town refused the Japanese entry. A shot was heard, and the two sides began firing. The Chinese government, under strong anti-Japanese pressure, refused to make any concessions in the negotiation of the dispute, and the Japanese also maintained their position. As a result, the conflict continued to grow. The significance of the Marco Polo Bridge incident is that following it, tensions did not subside again. Instead, there was an escalation, with larger forces committed by both sides, and fighting spread to other parts of China. Following the Marco Polo Bridge incident, which marked the beginning of the Second Sino-Japanese War, or War of Resistance against Japanese aggression between 1937 and 1945, the Japanese scored major victories, capturing Beijing, Shanghai, and the Chinese capital of Nanjing in 1937, which resulted in the Nanjing Massacre, also known as the Rape of Nanjing. With the outbreak of the Second Sino-Japanese War, Tanabe was appointed Chief of Staff of the 10th Imperial Japanese Army in October 1937. This was a new organization under the Japanese Central China Area Army, created as an emergency reinforcement force to supplement the Japanese Shanghai Expeditionary Army after the Battle of Shanghai, which lasted from the 13th of August to the 26th of November 1937, and was one of the largest and bloodiest battles of the entire war. Later described as Stalingrad on the Yangtze, and is often regarded as the battle where World War II started. After over 3 months of extensive fighting on land, in the air, and at sea, the battle concluded with a victory for Japan. The battle can be divided into 3 stages, and eventually involved nearly 1 million troops. The first stage lasted from the 13th to the 22nd of August, 1937, during which the National Revolutionary Army of the Republic of China attempted to eradicate Japanese troop presence in downtown Shanghai. The second stage lasted from the 23rd of August to the 26th of October, 1937, during which the Japanese launched amphibious landings on the Jiangsu coast, and the two armies fought a Stalingrad-like house-to-house battle, with the Japanese army attempting to gain control of the city and the surrounding regions. The last stage, ranging from the 27th of October to the end of November 1937, involved the retreat of the Chinese army in the face of Japanese flanking maneuvers and the ensuing combat on the road to China's capital, Nanjing. General Iwane Matsui, who drove the Chinese army from Shanghai and had Tanabe's 10th Army under his command, had made it clear to his superiors that he was determined to capture the capital city of China, Nanjing, which lay 300 kilometers west of Shanghai. Matsui forcefully asserted that the war with China would not end until Nanjing was under their control, and he envisaged that the fall of Nanjing would result in the total collapse of Kai-shek's government. Moritake Tanabe, with his 10th Army, participated in the Battle of Nanjing and the subsequent atrocities known as the Nanking Massacre. Although the massacre is generally described as having occurred over a 6-week period after the fall of Nanjing, the crimes committed by the Japanese army were not limited to that period. Many atrocities were reported to have been committed as the Japanese army advanced from Shanghai to Nanjing. Perhaps the most notorious atrocity was the killing contest between 2 Japanese officers, as reported in the Tokyo newspaper. The contest, a race between the 2 officers to see who could kill 100 people first using only a sword, was covered much like a sporting event, with regular updates on the score over a series of days. The Japanese military continued to move forward, breaching the last lines of Chinese resistance and arriving outside the city gates of Nanjing on the 9th of December. With reports of Japanese brutality, most of the civilian population had already fled Nanjing out of fear. Wealthy families were the first to flee, leaving Nanjing in automobiles, followed by the evacuation of the middle class and then the poor, while only the destitute lowest class, such as the ethnic Tanka boat people, remained behind. 3/4 of the population had fled Nanjing before the Japanese arrived. The foreigners in Nanjing created the Nanking Safety Zone, managed by the International Committee for the Nanjing Safety Zone, led by a German businessman and Nazi Party member, John Rabe. The zone and the activities of the International Committee were responsible for safely harboring 250,000 Chinese civilians from death and violence during the Nanjing Massacre. It was a safe haven in the city for women, children, and other non-combatants. The Japanese troops did respect the zone to an extent. Until the Japanese occupation, no shells entered that part of the city, except for a few stray shots. During the chaos following the attack on the city, some were killed in the safety zone, but the crimes that occurred in the rest of the city were far greater by all accounts. At noon, on the 9th of December, the Japanese military dropped leaflets into the city, urging the city of Nanjing to surrender within 24 hours, promising no mercy if the offer was refused. No response was received from the Chinese by the deadline on the 10th of December, and the General Iwade Matsui waited another hour before issuing the command to take Nanjing by force. On the 12th of December, under heavy artillery fire and aerial bombardment, General Sheng-chi, the commander of the Nanjing garrison during the city's siege, who had earlier announced the city would not surrender and would fight to the death, ordered his men to retreat. What followed was nothing short of chaos. Some Chinese soldiers stripped civilians of their clothing in a desperate attempt to blend in, and many others were shot by the Chinese supervisory unit as they tried to flee. On the 13th of December, the 6th and 116th Divisions of the Japanese Army were the first to enter the city, facing little military resistance. From the 13th of December, 1937, the Japanese Army engaged in random murder, wartime rape, looting, arson, and other war crimes. They hunted down and killed suspected Chinese soldiers and summarily arrested thousands of young Chinese men. Many innocent men were misidentified and killed in the process. Thousands were taken to the Yangtze River, where they were machine-gunned to death. Many Chinese soldiers were blown up with landmines, then doused with petrol and set on fire, and those who survived were killed with bayonets. Japanese soldiers also beheaded a number of Chinese prisoners of war. The Japanese also massacred families living outside the safety zone and raped tens of thousands of women. On one occasion, a Chinese woman, Mrs. Ha, had asked the Japanese soldiers why they had murdered her husband. Before finally killing both her and her baby with a bayonet in the chest, they shot Mrs. Ha and raped her. The number of women raped by Japanese soldiers ranged from 20 to 80,000, including some children and the elderly. A large number of rapes were done systematically by the Japanese soldiers as they went from door to door searching for girls, with many women being captured and gang-raped. Immediately after, the women were then often killed through explicit mutilation. A former Japanese soldier named Shiro Azuma spoke candidly about the process of rape and murder in Nanjing. "It would be alright if we only raped them. I shouldn't say alright, but we always stabbed and killed them, because dead bodies don't talk." After being raped by the Japanese soldiers, the victims were often photographed. There are also accounts of Japanese troops coercing families to commit incestuous acts. Sons were coerced into raping their mothers, fathers were forced to rape their daughters, and brothers were forced to rape their sisters. Instead of punishing the Japanese troops, who were responsible for wholesale rape, the Japanese Expeditionary Force in central China issued an order to set up comfort houses during this period of time. The Japanese army also looted the city and burned down many buildings. 1/3 of the city was destroyed as a result of arson. Such crimes continued from 3 to 6 weeks, depending on the types of crime. As many as 300,000 civilians and numerous unarmed Chinese soldiers were killed over the course of the 2 months. The chaos, fires, and mass graves make a precise count of casualties impossible. The violence subsided in February 1938 after the establishment of a Chinese-led, Japanese-influenced government. Tanabe's unit, which took part in the atrocities, was officially disbanded in Nanjing on the 14th of February 1938, and in October of the following year, Tanabe was promoted to lieutenant general. From March to November 1941, he was chief of staff of the Japanese Northern China Area Army. At the end of 1941, Tanabe was recalled to Japan to serve as vice chief of the Imperial Japanese Army General Staff, and was in this position at the time of the attack on Pearl Harbor. Tanabe strenuously opposed both the attack on Pearl Harbor and declaring war on the United States. Before the attack, many Americans were reluctant to become involved in the war in Europe. This all changed when the United States declared war on Japan, Nazi Germany's ally, bringing the country into World War II. Tanabe favored a defensive strategy of luring the Allies into campaigns in areas away from their bases in hopes of stretching their supply lines to Japan's advantage. He was instrumental in helping put an end to the disastrous attrition of Japanese forces at Guadalcanal. In April 1943, as conditions began to deteriorate for Japan along its southern front in the Pacific War, Tanabe was dispatched to Japanese-occupied Sumatra in the Netherlands East Indies to take command of the 25th Army under the Japanese 7th Army at Fort de Kock. On Sumatra, the Japanese had systematically mistreated prisoners of war, forcing them to build a railway that could transport coal and move troops across Sumatra. Tanabe took no interest in the health and welfare of these laborers. Moritake Tanabe remained at his post on Sumatra for the remainder of the war. The official People's Republic of China statistics for China's civilian and military casualties in the Second Sino-Japanese War from 1937 to 1945 are 20 million dead and 15 million wounded. At the end of the war, Moritake Tanabe was arrested by Dutch authorities and sent to Medan, located in the Indonesian province of North Sumatra, where he faced a Dutch military tribunal. Tanabe was tried there for crimes in the Dutch East Indies, unrelated to the crimes committed during the Nanjing Massacre, for which he, as the Chief of Staff of the Japanese 10th Army, was responsible. On the 30th of December, 1948, the Dutch military tribunal sentenced him to death by hanging. Tanabe was 60 years old when he was executed on the 10th of July, 1949. There were no tears shed for Moritake Tanabe. Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.